And then we're going to rewind to Saturday night and the return of Ron Killings. And this was the big story coming out of the Money in the Bank show. And we had 48 hours to look at this. And it was promoted throughout this evening that R-Truth, now Ron Killings, going under that name, would be appearing on Raw. And this was brought up at the press conference. And here is Paul Levesque answering the question about Ron Killings and the 6 days of fans revolting against this decision.
I wanted to know exactly, was he actually released or leaving the company? And if so, how much did fans play a role in it? Or was there something else that made you guys decide, like, you know what, we want this guy still here?
I love the question. You enjoying the show? The whole part of the show, man.
You know
Just
what?
sit back, shut up, and enjoy the ride.
At the end of the day, let us all remind them that The Rock is the final boss, thinking 20 steps ahead. So the best thing for them to do is to know their role, shut their mouth, and enjoy the ride that The Rock is taking them on.
Well, folks, guess what? Paul Levesque also has his license. He can also take you on a ride. And just shut up. I'm going to go so far as to accuse Paul Levesque of not loving that question in particular. I did find it interesting, like just to listen to it in his tone. Like Paul Levesque, I think we can say without any overreaching that this guy certainly likes a certain level of questions, mainly that are very complimentary or allow him to respond about the high points of his business, of his creative. Anything that is ever asked of him that by any means strays from that kind of narrow set of questions, I think he would like. You certainly get defensive Paul, and that was this was not an overtly defensive answer that he gave, but it was definitely his one of. I think he has certainly his belief of if he could make all wrestling news outside of WWE disappear, he would do that in a heartbeat. I think there are aspects you can learn a lot from Paul Levesque in these press conferences. And the way this came off to me, was almost as though like the story is that the company made a decision. The company acknowledged this was a mistake. The people brought back Ron Killings, and Paul Levesque was not going to own that as kind of saying we screwed up or anything like that. And you just get the kind of default, just enjoy the show, all part of the show.
Yeah, it's at this point, I honestly wouldn't have expected any different sort of an answer from a Paul Levesque. You know, it represents a very tricky situation for him, because I think at this point it is very much believe that he probably is the ultimate decision maker when it comes to whose contract it was that he was going to cut. So to answer for this would basically be kind of outing himself as the person who made that mistake, a mistake that, you know, I think for somebody who probably prides himself on being able to read the audience, he greatly misjudged the audience in letting Ron Killings, R-Truth, go.
Isn't the return of Ron Killings though that admission?
Not if
this is the story. Like, it's literally the story on screen is the real one, that the fans brought this guy back. I mean, Paul Levesque doesn't have to say, yeah, I really screwed this one up, but to just acknowledge that, you know what?
I don't think he was about to engage in that conversation at a press conference like this. And it could be because he just ultimately prefers to not speak at length about things that, you know, he would consider behind the curtain to this extent. But it was a clear deflection that I think he had prepped for, knowing how big of a topic this was going to be.
Yeah, I think there's like, listen, my bar of what is going to be shared in these settings is ultimately low, but this is one where it's literally the storyline is the story. Like it is like you're furthering this return angle by giving credence to a question like that in the press conference setting. And it's simply, you know what, we heard you, we heard the people, and we listened to our audience. Like, you can give a very milquetoast answer and still feel like you are engaging with your
Yes.
media question here in this.
But in the story, the entity that was responsible for Ron Killing's dismissal is not a singular person. It's this sort of overlord. It's the bean counter, if you will. It's not Levesque having to personally answer for it like he would have in this scenario.
Well, I think there's that element to it is that as well. So, yes, Ron Killings is back. We got further details that came out of this. I mean, people took this answer as though Paul was like, this was all our plan, and tune in Monday when Carlito and Valhalla are back. And if no better person I could have asked for than Christopher Killings, Ron Killing's son, to go online.
Not since AJ Styles' son on Twitch has there been a great child of a wrestler who's just given us. I mean, you want the truth? Look no further than Chris Killings. Okay,
this guy is my new interview to seek out. But no, first of all, throwing the cap emoji over top of Paul Levesque. I would have loved to have seen Paul on his phone asking, "Well, what does this mean?" And
he's not wearing
then
that. He's not
flat out stating like this was not a work, and congrats on your new deal, Dad. Last run, he also added. So Fightful had a lot of great details kind of about the all of the negotiations that went on, that this kind of came together in the last couple of days. So by the time that SmackDown promo occurred at the end of the show Friday with John Cena, like this looked to be in place. But it seemed that, Ron Killings was not sitting by his phone waiting for Paul Levesque or WWE to call him to come back. And it seemed that it had to go all the way up to Nick Khan to really get this one over the finish line, which is an interesting dynamic. And they got him back. And one of the provisions was, and it was made very clear on both with the shirt they released and with tonight's promo, is that he's going to go by his real name of Ron Killings instead of R-Truth. So I always talk about the fact that, I mean, these wrestlers and having any little bit of leverage, and he had some here, and it looks like he used it. He got a contract out of this. You would presume one that he was happy with. He wanted to be billed under his name for whatever purposes. He got that. He's back.
Well, he owns the IP is maybe the simplest answer. That's owns it. Ron Killings. He could take it with him beyond the WWE when R-Truth he may not be able to.
I mean, that's as simple as it needs to be. I mean, this is a name that they can't take away from him when he's eventually done with WWE. And he's coming back in a more serious role, and they have to push him with this angle. So, I mean, Ron Killings played this one really well, and you were very strong on this being a potential outcome of this whole thing, that Ron Killings, we're talking TNA and GCW and indie runs, and you were even stating last week, WWE is the one that does make the most sense, and it ended up making the most sense for both sides.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is not unprecedented when it comes to the WWE. They've done these sort of things before. They've made mistakes in the past with letting people go, and the audience has brought people back. I think that likelihood is even more the case now with Paul Levesque, who I think, for the most part, does really have his ear to the ground in a big way. And again, inadvertently, they've made Ron Killings into the biggest star, the hottest free agent in the entire industry, and they're not just going to let the competition pick that up based off of their own wrongdoing. Somebody like him is exactly the type of pickup that an AEW would benefit from to further their narrative as the sort of saving place for
we're not the heartless corporation that's just looking at spreadsheets when we're making our talent decisions.
Yeah. So WWE, I mean, I'm an effort to reclaim the story and to at least draw some benefit out of it, so that others don't, at the very least. He played this one well, of course, but I mean, it was the audience that really did get him there. I don't think any of us, I certainly didn't expect this groundswell of a reaction to this particular release. And if I'm Carlito, I just feel like there's a great punchline to be had. What about me, guys? How about me?
I'm around. I'll talk to Paul. I don't need my name. I'll come back, but I'm Carly. And this will be an interesting one because in the Paul Levesque, like Paul Levesque got to babyface himself very well when he ascended to this role. He got to bring back a lot of the names that Vince McMahon got rid of, and even Punk, like Vince is still in the mix in that era, 2023, but. A lot of the names he brought back were like your Brays and, your EOs, not EO, but
Good Brothers
as well. I mean, there were a lot. Dakota Kai, that's the one I was thinking of as well. Right. Anyway, there's been a lot of them. Yeah, there's been a number of them. In the Vince McMahon playbook, and the one I go to is the Matt Hardy one, which is little different circumstances, but one where he was fired and the crowd, they began chanting for Matt Hardy, and eventually it made sense. They brought back Matt Hardy, and in time, it was, here was a guy who, he went online and he eviscerated, like he went against WWE, and Vince got him back, but it was for the purposes of getting Edge over, and he was going to beat Matt Hardy like a drum in time. And I don't think that's the scenario we're going to see play out here, but it is going to be something interesting to watch that, Vince McMahon, there would be instances where, he was not going to be dictated by the audience of who he hires and fires, who he pushes or doesn't push. It's going to be on my time. And in a Matt Hardy one, it was like, I'm going to give everyone Matt Hardy, but he's going to be used in my vision. And it was not to be brought back to be this top guy for the audience to get behind. And with Ron Killings, like we have a similar dynamic, but now we're going to see Paul Levesque, and it, I think, would behoove him to respond to the audience and give this guy a bit of a run. But it's an interesting one nonetheless, that we haven't really seen Paul Levesque in this situation before that we have seen Vincent.
We've never heard such a loud reaction to a Paul Levesque internal decision as this ever. It is, I think the biggest L he's had to take. And how does he respond to that?
Oh, he didn't want to take that L at the press conference. And it is an interesting dynamic that the reporting was it was Nick Khan who ended up getting this guy back in. It was ultimately him going there and securing this deal to get him back. But yes, he was back tonight. We will get into the whole angle with
John writing a lengthy piece about all of this as well that you guys can read on the website today.
Yeah, I was patting myself on the back for that title. It was just for you, Wei.
Some of your greatest work. Column Truth or Consequences: Why WWE Brought Back Ron Killings. Forget the Ron Killings T-shirt. You really should have made that the T-shirt.
Well, we're in a headline era, Wei, so you gotta grab them with the headline if for nothing else. Very good. Yes, you can read that up on the site today, all about Ron Killings and this past week, and also, Wade, there will inevitably be more cuts.
Oh yeah. How are they going to make up this money that they're suddenly giving back to Ron Killings?
Well, do they look at this with a bit more trepidation on you now 100%. Have given the audience a playbook of someone that they really care for, that they know that, hey, we have not only made the example, but it's the online storyline. Ron Killings' promo was all about, you brought me back here. So the next time there is a cut of some figure that they really like, does this kind of set the stage for this to happen again?
Yeah. I mean, they need to find more Valhallas and Carlitos and less Ron Killings is what they need to do.
I mean, this might make them think twice about certain people, just because someone is getting up there in age or something like that. The inverse of that is people that have been on your television for 10, 15 years, they develop a following from their fan base.
And I guess the interesting part there is, I mean, reportedly Ron Killings had a relatively high contract for somebody of his position because he had been there for so long. Who are other comparables in a similar situation that have been there for a long time and might not necessarily be utilized to what their value is as a contract, but nonetheless have acquired just this sort of long tenured relationship with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those names that are out there that have been there for a long amount of time. It's June on the Post Wrestling Cafe. We are going through tons of your questions on the Ask Away mailbag show, and we're bringing you not one, but two editions of Rewind Away, including a review of the Katsuyori Shibata documentary, California Dreamin', covering his time as head trainer at the LA Dojo. Plus, Karen and Bruce have you covered for New Japan Dominion. Chris from LA has chosen another musical edition of Rewind Away to join Wei Ting and Nate Milton. Plus, we have extended editions of Rewind to Raw, Rewind to Dynamite, and Rewind to SmackDown coming at you every single week, along with all of your weekly favorites. It's postwrestlingcafe.com.